On today's podcast, we have Mark Tipton, founder, ex-CEO of Aspire. We have Eli Zevin, who's the current general manager of Aspire. And we talk about how Aspire got started. We talk about Kevin Kehoe, one of the original founders who has since passed, and what his legacy is. It was very interesting for me to hear Mark talk about the importance of values and getting everyone and only hiring people that were on the same page with the passion for the industry and the values that Aspire represents. And that's how they staffed and scaled their company. So it's not just what we talk about that you should do in your smaller company, or medium-sized company, but really it's a strategy that really worked for Aspire. We spend quite a bit of time talking about the obstacles and challenges that Mark Tipton initially faced with his 12-year journey at Aspire. And we then bring in Eli, who's the current GM, and what moves him and his focus, which I was also surprised at how customer-centric he is in his strategies to grow their business and improve their technology. It was really eye-opening from both segments, even for me, that's like, God, take this, larger company and they do business just like you do and I do, and very confirming. Aspire, we also get into AI, of course, and how they're looking at AI to upgrade their software. Also, Mark Tipton spoke about, I thought this was interesting, about how he should not get in the way of his people, right? Once you start building an organization, the owner has to be very careful where they insert themselves. And so I think you're really going to learn a lot about Aspire, also about Kevin Kehoe. We really talked about, some of the sadness for those of us who knew him, that we miss him. And if you didn't know Kevin, that part may not be as interesting to you, but he was really, once he brought the founding juice to the company from an industry centric passion. And so I think you're going to gain a lot here. I also want to mention that we recorded this in December, roughly, and this is also when we run sort of our special for our peer groups. We have one or two, what I'll call rare seats open in 4 of our different peer groups that will be meeting end of January, February, and March. And we offer a seasonal discount if you sign up before the end of the year. So if you're at all thinking about getting involved in a peer group and being on a journey together, because it's lonely at the top, as you know, and it's also easier to make mistakes when you're just going it alone. And so we want to help you. We have that same passion that Mark Tipton and Kevin Kehoe have, and we all have that passion. And so we really want to help you on your journey. Go to jeffreyscott.biz, go under the services, and you can find the link to start applying to become a member of one of our groups. These groups change lives. I hear it from all of my members, current clients, older, past clients. It changed my life and my business for the better. So if you're ready to get started and jump up, take that action. Otherwise, let's jump right into it. Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO, or should it be CEOs? Because we have 2 great CEOs on this podcast today, Mark Tipton and Eli Zevin. I hope I pronounced your name right.
You got it.
Can you guys each introduce yourself, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Jeffrey, thanks for having us on. This is great to speak with you, and I've had a chance to know you over the years, so good to join your podcast. Yes, I'm Mark Tipton, the now former CEO of Aspire Software. I'm one of the co-founders of Aspire and have led it for the past 12 years. And just recently, the last month and a half, transitioned out of that.
Okay. Eli.
Yeah, just to echo what Mark said, really appreciate you having us on, Jeff, and pleasure to be here. So I'm Eli Zevin. I'm actually not the CEO. I'm the general manager of Aspire, but did take over from Mark as the former CEO. And really an honor to be overseeing Aspire now and into the future.
Okay. GM means you have most CEO responsibilities, except maybe for certain CapEx kind of things.
Yeah, for the most part. The way we're structured is that I oversee most of our customer facing teams directly and then have dotted line responsibilities to all of the supporting teams across the business. But ultimately I own the results of Aspire. So you could,
There you go.
kind of see it very similarly that way.
Excellent. So Mark, how many years has it been in
12
Aspire?
years. Yeah. Yeah. We started in 2013, towards the end of 2013.
Where were
Nobody
you
heard about us back then because it was kind of a bit of a skunkworks project, but
Yeah.
that's
But where did you
technically
come
when we
from?
started.
Like before that?
Yeah. So I've got a background in software my whole career. So I started out actually while I was still in college. I got my first job as a software engineer and began my career there building software. I've then moved around through various roles up through product management roles with some organizations, and then just got the bug to go out on my own. Formed a company back in '99 with some co-founders, and we were in the custom software space, just building software for anybody and everybody, everything from distribution systems to loan origination systems to, I mean, you name it. We built all kinds of systems. And I was introduced to the landscape industry as part of that business through a friend of a friend, made a connection with a landscape company that was a regional company that needed a system and said, we can't buy anything off the shelf. We wanted to build something. So I led a team that built that, and that was my introduction to the industry, and really fell in love with the industry. I appreciate so much the people that make up this industry. I mean, it's hard to find too many pretentious people in landscape because most of them like literally started off on a mower, right? I mean, you look at the great companies that were there and that are out there today, and so many of them were founded by people that sold the job and then delivered the work and then sold the next job, and over the years built incredible businesses. And I've gotten to know so many people. I love the space, and I saw a huge opportunity to really build a product that the industry definitely needed, and one that felt like I could make a huge impact and not just change one or two businesses, but really up level the industry as a whole, because there were a lot of best practices that were beginning to be taught. This was back in the late 2000s, 2006, 2007, 2008. And so there was a lot that was being taught and talked about, but there weren't a lot of ways to implement the best practice effectively within businesses. And so really wanted to take advantage of that opportunity. And so I partnered up with Kevin Kehoe in 2013, and we formed Aspire with that vision that we wanted to change the industry. Kevin had a long history in the industry, 20 plus years consulting, working with some of the best companies in the industry on business management practices, sales management practices, budgeting, all kinds of things. And so we got together and we really had that shared vision, and we had a lot of energy, motivation behind us. And so we jumped in and we really were able to hit the mark. Version 1.0 looked a lot different than whatever version we're on today, many years later, but it hit the mark on the core things that we knew needed to be done to effectively drive a landscape business. And so that really put us in a position to grow. And through relationships.
Before we get too far into that, what's the boss connection to Aspire? Somebody was in boss first and then came to Aspire?
That was me. Yeah, I was one of the founders of that business and led the development of that product until I did Aspire.
Okay. So not many people get a redo in life. It looks like you did.
Yeah. No, it's there's not too many that do, and it was a great opportunity for me to just take lessons learned, and both in business as well as just refining the vision for what the industry was really needing, and combine that with working with Kevin and understanding more through some of his vision as well. It just was a good match. That really
it's probably what makes Aspire as good as it is, because you got to experiment on someone else's company and what would I do differently, and here we have.
Yeah, anytime you get to do something twice, if you built a house and then you go build your second house, it's like, okay, you would probably do a few things different. And so, it was really, I look back at all the experiences that I had, and while I wouldn't have ever charted them out the way that they happened, I believe they all happened for a reason and led to, what was a phenomenal journey for me in the landscape business.
And so you and Kevin were co-founders, and were you like co-CEOs, or you just sort of worked together hand in glove?
Yeah, we, back in those days, we were both rolling up our sleeves and getting in and doing whatever needed to be done to keep things going. We didn't have titles. I think we called ourselves partners or something like that, but we didn't even have business cards. So, no email signatures, nothing like that. It was let's just get this thing going. So yeah, in those early years, yeah, it was, and Kevin was primarily, he had so many strong relationships across the industry. I was leading the product development and building some of the other areas of the organization, like our implementation team, our support team, some of the not as fun parts, the administrative pieces of the business, all of that. And so we just kind of shared responsibilities as we were building the business.
And then Kevin passed, how many years ago is it?
3 years ago, I
3
believe.
years.
Yeah.
But but then he was sick for like, I don't really know, 6 years or something or more.
Yeah, well, it wasn't long after we started the business where, he received that unfortunate diagnosis nobody wants to receive. And and so that was early days. And so that was one of, our challenges with the business was just, starting this thing off. And at the same time, he's dealing with, health challenges that were, you know, very, very difficult, very challenging. And it's amazing what he was able to do in the midst of some, physically challenging times.
He definitely was sort of a hero, well liked. I never, I liked him. I went to his classes early on, and I've never met anybody that said, oh, I don't like that guy. So he was, I think he really stands for what you said of the non-pretentiousness and real, just the salt of the earth. You didn't use that phrase, but salt of the earth that makes our industry so great.
Yeah, and he had an affinity for the industry as well. That's something that really bonded us, that we shared. He had, there are many people, to this day that would tell you they were great friends with Kevin, because when he signed up a customer, he oftentimes, ended up being friends with them, and he was so dedicated to him and did great work, not just for Aspire and getting Aspire up and off the ground for so many companies before he did Aspire.
Was a personal question, you don't have to answer or answer it any way you want, but like, was his passing like a mark for you? Like, things are changing, and maybe I'll do something different, or like, was there any of that?
It was definitely a mark. There wasn't anything about doing anything different. At the time of Kevin's passing, Aspire had grown. It was well beyond me. A lot of people have said, "Hey, Mark, this is your company. How do you feel about your company doing this, that, or the other thing?" And those of you out there who have built big companies, at some point, you may be kind of steering it, but it's a thing in and of itself, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of. The culture at Aspire, the people that made that culture and made it what it is, were so great. It was so great to be a part of that. What Kevin's passing was certainly a significant mark. It wasn't one in which we were looking at, okay, well, now what do we do? Where do we go?
Yeah.
By that point in time, Kevin had stepped away from the business, and so it was impactful, but didn't change kind of the direction of Aspire.
Yeah. I don't mean to I didn't think I was going to go down this road, but I just want to say that, like, my mom was sick for 7 years, and we saw her decline. And so we were like kind of ready for it. I guess the same with you and Kevin. And I have somebody super important in my life, my financial planner, older gentleman, and he got mad cow disease, Jacob something it's called.
Okay.
He did a lot of service trips in South America, donating his time and money. And he got sick and died in like 30 days. And that devastated me more than my mom, which I know sounds crazy. But I guess you really got to be on that journey with Kevin. So I'm just thinking that probably made it better in some ways.
Yeah, Kevin's journey was a long journey, right? It was probably a 8.5-year journey, somewhere between 8 and 9 year journey, and there were ups and downs during that time. You know, the irony is, Kevin, if you do Kevin was one of the healthiest people you would know. Like, you know, Kevin's vices were, you know, eating too much fish or, you know, something like that. Like he was one of the healthiest eaters, you know, physically active. Like if you said, what does a healthy lifestyle look like? You look at Kevin and, you know, for him to suffer with a disease like this, it's like, there's just not a justice there, right? That's not right. You know, he's done all the things the right way to take care of his body, but you know, that's one of those things where, you know, a disease like cancer is so indiscriminate on who it takes. And it is a brutal disease. You know, if you've had a friend or a family member go through it, the suffering, the lack of direction, like, you know, our healthcare system isn't always helpful in helping you make the choices and do the things you need to do for your treatment, because there's so many different specialties and doctors. And you know, watching somebody go through that. And, you know, Kevin never did anything halfway. So he was all in on everything he needed to do to beat the disease. And it is amazing how long he was able to go with a pretty serious diagnosis early on.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's one of the challenging things in life is watching somebody suffer. And he suffered a lot over those years. He had periods that were better where he wasn't having to seek treatment. It was overall very, very difficult.
You know, I just came back from the Bahamas where we have a client and we ran one of our peer groups there. By the way, you'll be happy to hear this, that this client's on 3 different branded softwares, and we're like, dude, time to roll it up. And you can guess which one we told him to roll up into.
There's a direction I would recommend for him.
Yeah. And so an issue came up where he was talking about loss, and I won't get into the specifics, but we really had this poignant discussion in the peer group about how we're always focused on winning, and you have all these wins, a winning culture, performance, but the older you get, the bigger you get, the more influence you have in your community, the more you have to really understand loss and how to deal with it. You're going to have just as much loss as you do winning, and you need those skills on how to like mentally handle it, help others handle it. It's not something, I didn't even plan on talking about this, but it's not something we really prepare for. We just sort of deal with it, but it's really a skill set you need as a leader.
Yeah, very, very much so. Like no great thing is ever accomplished without dealing with the obstacles along the way. And a lot of times those obstacles are quite significant, whether they're health or, you know, we've had a myriad of business issues over the years that we've had to deal with, or just other factors that come into play where, you know, you have one plan, right? Was it Tyson that said, hey, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And then what do? And, you know, those of us who've been on these journeys, you know, we've all experienced it. I mean, I don't know anybody who's been on a journey that, you know, even the most successful ones that didn't have super challenging times along the way. You know, I love, you know, one of the things I enjoyed, we were acquired by Service Titan back in 2021, and getting to know the 2 founders of Service Titan, Ara and Vahe, and hearing their stories and the challenges that they had to deal with along the way. And they're like one of the most successful startup stories in the history of our country. Incredible, but it was no slam dunk. And there were a lot of days where, look, we don't think it's going to work. Like, we're not sure we're going to make it the next month. And so you all go through those. So yeah, I do think that's a big part of being a leader is, how are you when those curveballs come? When you had one plan and it's not going to happen the way you planned it. How are you going to continue to move forward? How are you going to motivate your team? And how are you going to support the people who are struggling?
What are the business lessons before we talk about Aspire, the content? What are the business lessons, Mark, that now that you're retired, I don't know if you're going to write a memoir or not, but give us a peek into looking back. What are some business lessons that anybody listening could really learn from in their business, in their landscape business?
Yeah, I think first of all, there won't be any memoirs. I'm not a writer, so no, nothing that's gonna show up in any kind of form to read. But I definitely have learned a lot over the years, and kind of in my next chapter, one of the things I'm looking to do is to give back, share some of those learnings, and instead of writing a book or something, I'm volunteering my time, both professionally as well as just personally in areas where I can share some of those learnings. I work, for example, with the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center at the University of Missouri in St. Louis, and working with startup companies and participating with them and helping them on their journeys through advising and so forth. And also I get involved on the investing side too with some of these startups and do some professional board directors roles as well. So that's more of how I'm participating. But, I look back at some of the things that I've learned along the way. And so many of us look at ourselves personally and our role as being so important to the organization and so critical, and they can't live without me. And part of that's true. The part that it is your role is important and what you do is important in leading an organization. The part that's not true is they can't actually live without you. And so not taking yourself too seriously and putting yourself on too high of a pedestal. I've experienced this multiple times in my career, including just recently. Eli is going to be able to validate the fact that Aspire is going to live, and not just live, but live well without me. But part of that is our jobs too. When it's time for us to step down, is have we prepared the team? Have we brought in the right people to lead the organization going forward? And so as you look at your role as a leader of the organization, kind of understanding that. I always looked at my role as not one that was about so much my desires, the way I wanted to do things. Not that wasn't a factor in anything, but I looked at myself as I'm a steward of this organization, of this business. Having outside investment, which we had angel investors and we had private equity, and ultimately were acquired by ServiceTitan, which was a venture capital backed business. Now, obviously, they're a public business, but having investors, they will remind you of, your duties if you're not on top of it. But looking at, okay, one of the thoughts I had every day getting up was, how do I not get in the way of the opportunities that are in front of this organization?
Wait, repeat that. That's interesting. Say that again.
Yeah. How do I not get in the way of the opportunities that are in front of Aspire? How do I fulfill my role in a way where I put the people that are within the organization, other leaders, other individuals within the other organization, and the business itself as the primary focus of my job? Obviously, there's strategic decisions that need to be made on direction, but taking all that into account and saying, my preference is A, B, or C isn't the driving factor in our decisions. It's what's the right thing for this organization. I am not running a lifestyle business here. I'm running a business that has investors, that have customers who I consider my customers investors as well. You don't sign up for a platform like Aspire and go, we're going to run it for 6 months or a year, and then we're going to move on to something else. Every one of our customers looks at, Aspire as an investment that they're making in their future. And they're counting on it to not just be there today, but to also be in the position that it needs to be in a year from now, 2 years from now. And you'll get a chance to hear from Eli on a lot of his thinking around that in a little bit. But, That's how I wouldn't say day one I looked at my role that way, but definitely as the organization grew, as I began doing things that I had never done before. I'd never led an organization that had grown from, you know, a handful of people to hundreds of people that were in the organization. And so having that mindset, I think was really helpful and really helped guide me in making the right decisions, because there's decisions I made that were not my personal preference, but they were best for the organization in helping us achieve the promises that we gave to our customers and to our investors and to the team itself.
Yeah, I think owners definitely have to learn and maybe even use those words of, here's my preference versus this is a priority for me. And, what you're saying is you had to live or force yourself to live more on the preference side. Hey, here's my preference, but it's not a priority. We have to make a decision on what's best. I do think owners have to learn that and be really careful about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of owners that get in the way of their organizations. Like they could grow more. They could be creating way more opportunities for their people and even serving their customers better, but they choose not to. And sometimes that's, you're running a business, it's a lifestyle business and it's yours. That's what you want to do. But if you're there to, create those opportunities for your team, for your investors, there's definitely a different perspective to have. And it does open the doors to scaling an organization in very unique ways.
Most owners, I'm at 9.9, probably start with, I am the business.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they buy the business, which we are seeing more and more of. And I don't mean PE. I just mean I bought $1 million business. I merged with another $1 million business. Now I've got a $5 million business. We have clients. That's how they got into it. But most start off, I am the business, and they have to want to get to, I am not the business. And that's both, how do I do it? And head trash, why do I want to do it? And all that stuff. But once, do that, that's where the thing really scales.
And one of the other things I learned along the way is the importance of culture. And we had what we called our purpose statement. We followed the EOS model, and you may be familiar with that. It's gaining traction, if you will, in a lot of companies these days. But
wait, do you still follow that? Does Aspire use EOS?
There's tenets of it that are used throughout the organization. It's not implemented the way it was when, right now Aspire is part of ServiceTitan. So, when I was leading Aspire, we were an independent organization, even after ServiceTitan acquired us. And we ran EOS until we integrated into ServiceTitan, but they're still within Aspire. There's departments that still use a lot of the tenets of the OS as part of their cadence of meetings or their planning process, or use some of the tools that are part of the OS. We weren't overly religious about using EOS. We used it as a framework, but we didn't follow everything. But it was very helpful. And one of the ways it was extremely helpful was really in being able to articulate our purpose, which led to the development of our core values, which really enabled us to, I believe, scale the organization and maintain who we were. So many organizations that are in the rapid growth that Aspire went through really lose kind of the identity of who they are and what's driven them to the point of success that they had. As they grow, they lose a lot of that. And that framework that EOS brought really enabled us to identify those things, communicate them effectively, have them be foundational, not just to the leadership team who was doing strategic planning, but to each of the teams that was not just the leadership, but individual contributors that were on the front lines dealing with customers, all being aligned around this common set of values that were real. Like they weren't something that was plastered on a wall somewhere that nobody believed in. It was like, no, I took the job at Aspire because I read these and I believed in them. And conversely, as we were hiring people, we were looking at the individuals we were hiring going, how do they line up with our values? Not that they're good people or bad people if they do or if they don't, but are they a good fit for us? Can we plug them into one of our teams and know that they're going to feel like they're part of the team? Everybody right now is aligned with who we are. And we want to hire more people who are aligned with who we are and what our values were. And so that was really, really helpful in seeing how important that piece was to the business. Because if you asked me 7, 8 years ago, hey, what do you think of core values and purposes? And I'd be like, that's fluffy stuff. We got a lot of work to do. We don't have time to sit around and talk about those things. And you talk to me today, and I will tell you they were an instrumental part of Aspire's success and ability to deliver on the promises that we made. Were driven by a team that bought in. Like we were true believers, top to bottom, on why we were there to do what we were doing and why you need to make money. Absolutely 100% a critical part of business. That wasn't the core motivation of the team. It was our purpose, which was changing lives and changing lives, not just for our customers, but also within our organization ourselves. And if you look at the people that are there today at Aspire, also people who have had time at Aspire and moved on to other things, you'll hear that consistently over and over again of how important that was at being part of a team that was aligned so tightly.
Recently, we've been in our organization and with our clients, and a lot of our clients use EOS. It's kind of fun to hear how a large company or relatively large company uses EOS. But recently, we've been using objectives and key results, OKRs, and bolting that on top, or bolting is the right word, but using that as really the planning mechanism, which we have found that EO or EOS doesn't really give you. It sort of gives you, but doesn't really give you the, it's sort of like EOS gives you the bones, but not the brain, the strategy part. And we've found that using, and this is just in this past year, and we're implementing it with all of our clients, objectives and key results to really give a strategic, focus or arrowhead to put on to put a point on where we're going. And have you heard of that? Do you guys use that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So, EOS has this concept of goals and rocks, which, leave a little bit of detail to be figured out, which I think is where the OKRs kick in. And so I think the OKRs are a great framework for taking, some of those tenets of EOS to the next level, right? And creating some very practical things that you can execute on. I think OKR is a great framework.
Yeah.
We actually used OKRs at Service Titan for a long time, and kind of continue to do to a degree as well. And what I've seen, Jeff, on that side is like our ability to scale and all be rowing the same direction was significantly enhanced once we adopted that framework, because it all rolls up to sort of an eventual top level goal that everyone is trying to accomplish, right? And so I think, when you think about scaling, and by the way, it's so much in this conversation with Mark so far that I think goes to how do you scale a successful business, whether it's culture or hiring or, naming your values and all these things. Like I think the OKR framework is another component there that I've seen really be effective with scaling.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, it did start in software, didn't it? Early on, historically.
Yeah, I would bet it did. It certainly feels that way. I don't know the origins, but
it did.
It rings of so many things that are part of software, like, the agile and all of that. So yeah. Okay.
So Eli, let's segue a little bit. How do you fill shoes like Mark's?
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know. That's not really a fair question, but like you're sitting here listening to talk. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I can tell you, you don't. I mean, it's like, it's not possible to do that. That can't really be what you're trying to do. It's more about figuring out like what different pair of shoes you need to wear to keep walking on the path, right? I think that's really what we've been doing. The exciting part that I think was kind of woven into a lot of the conversation so far is the team that's in place, right? I'm coming in as the general manager and really to steer the ship, but the team that is in place with Aspire that Mark built and the culture continues to exist. It's not like we're starting over from scratch. And so we're really coming in from a great place. It was I think my biggest takeaway in the first couple of months. Like, I really set out to try to meet everyone on the team, especially our customer facing folks that interact with our clients every day.
How big's the team?
So in terms of the total number of people working on the Aspire software, including all the R&D folks and all of that, is a few hundred. But the post-sales team that I directly oversee, which is our implementation folks and our success folks, is less than 100 total. So, we have an outsized number of people really focused on building the software and continuing to develop it. As you can kind of understand from those ratios. But as I started out, I really wanted to be with everyone individually and just understand what they're all about and, kind of get to know them a little bit personally. And the most striking thing I heard was the consistency of why they're here, right? Which was all about making our clients successful ultimately. And the background that they had prior to Aspire, which was almost entirely, with some exceptions, having been users of Aspire who loved using the software and wanted to make an impact more broadly. It was really an incredible thing to just every single conversation I was doing 3 or 4 a day. It was like almost every single one I would hear those two things. And that was very inspirational for me because I'm not coming in with that landscape background. So I think helpful that there's so many folks at Aspire who do. And B, I think really as a tribute to what Mark and his leadership team had established was that consistency of the motivation behind why we're all doing what we're doing around making landscapers successful and helping them grow their businesses. So a pretty incredible thing to see. And I think for me, similar to what Mark said, just being a steward of the team and of the business and really trying to take it to the next level and bring it forward, but very lucky to be able to do so with that culture intact, with the team in place who is finding so much success because of that culture that's been established.
Wow. Eli, you got to skip over the painful parts of Aspire development. I remember talking to Kevin like early on, and I'd be like, Kevin, my clients feel like a year of their life just disappears when they onboard Aspire. And
yeah,
I don't know if you've heard that, Eli. I mean, you guys have solved most of that. I'm sure you have. I don't really hear that anymore.
I think we've done pretty well there now, luckily. And I think even some recent stuff we've been working on that helps there. What I'll tell you though, Jeff, is, I might have skipped over that on the Aspire story, but I was very much involved in that on the Service Titan story. My background actually within Service Titan, I started out implementing the software when I first joined. So it was very hands-on and seeing that exact same challenge, just with a different software.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say he may not have had Aspire pain, but he had pain. He understood.
Yeah. So you have been punched in the face is what we're saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And those early days when I joined Aspire when I joined Service Titan, in 2016, it was my first job in software. And I started out just implementing the software for the smallest businesses that were signing up. That was kind of where I cut my teeth a little bit. And, it certainly got punched in the face quite a few times. It was also, I think, the most fun role I've ever had. Because you get to really see, even though there's a lot you got to work through and there's a lot of pain that comes in and challenges you're working through and all of that, the software worked incredibly well when it was implemented well. And so just being part of the growth story of those businesses I was working with, I'd never felt anything like that before. And I think that's really been huge.
Let me ask you about that, because I have clients irrigation service clients that onboarded Service Titan before you bought Aspire. Before Aspire was sort of even the big sexy thing, Service Titan was the big sexy thing in irrigation, and it was light years ahead of other software, just like going from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional chess, and complex as well, but total game changer for how you would think about running an irrigation service business. What is that? And I'm not quite sure what I'm asking here. I'm just sort of guessing as I'm asking this, but is Aspire gonna use what Service Titan did sort of as a roadmap? Does it match that way? Or
so I think that there's a couple of ways
I would in real quick, Eli, and I'll let you finish with that, because this is one of the things that I was excited about with bringing Eli into the Aspire organization. Because as you heard, Eli's been with Service Titan for a decade and amazing experiences over those years. But, one of the most challenging aspects of not just Aspire, but any company that does what Aspire does, is the implementation, right? Taking an organization that's not using it, changing habits, behaviors, setting up all the data and everything that's required to be successful with it, and implementing new behaviors and SOPs. So Eli has such a strong background in that. And to me, that's kind of the basic building block for understanding how to run a successful organization that serves an industry like Aspire does with Landscape. And so bringing Eli in, I was so excited to hear the experience he's had and see the successes, that Service Titan has had and the lessons that they've learned. Eli will be the first to tell you that many mistakes have been made along the way and a lot of things had to be changed and hard lessons learned. We've had some of that too. Service Titan's ahead of Aspire in that. And so bringing Eli on is bringing on somebody who has incredibly relevant experience and is bringing in not so much just like a playbook of we're just going to do things the Service Titan way, but the lessons learned and seeing what works and what doesn't, because there's so many similarities to Service Titan implementation, Aspire implementation. We effectively perform the same functions in a business where Service Titan's focused on plumbing, HVAC, electrical, roofing, garage door businesses, and Aspire's focused on landscaping, but many, many similarities. And so that was one of the exciting things for me of saying, yeah, Eli is going to show up and see and not just carry this thing forward, continuing doing what we're doing. He's going to make us better. So I'll tee that up for you, Eli, and you can take it from there.
Eli, I just want to say before you jump in, I want to speak to the listening audience. This is a great reason to bring a sort of a general manager into one's business, and they don't need to come from landscape. Eli just said, I don't know landscaping. I mean, you said something like that, and you don't need a GM who knows how to dig a hole, plant a tree, build a straight wall, but that person can bring some huge amount of skills and talents to your business. So I work with a lot of our clients on, or a good amount of them, on bringing in, you might call it an integrator, but it's much more than that. I mean, a good GM could run the business, right? And so when we've brought in from the outside world great GMs into our clients' companies, and it just really allows the visionary to do what they're going to do. And so I could imagine, Eli, that you've really brought some tremendous skills into the Aspire world.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I think it depends on the existing team you have also. Like, I think part of the reason that I've been able to be successful so far and, hopefully continue to be, is I offset in some ways the skills that we have in droves with Aspire. Like, we have so much landscape knowledge and industry knowledge and expertise that what I think when the team was looking for who's going to be the GM, that didn't need to be something, that was the top priority, right? And so I think it's really also about, understanding the state of your business and figuring out like what can complement what we already have as well. But yeah, as Mark mentioned, I think the implementation experience I have has really served to be very crucial in taking the business forward so far. And a lot of it is the change management aspect, but I think it's also sort of the operational mindset you have to have in implementation. So here's an example. Over my last couple of years, so I talked about, I started out implementing the software directly. Over the last few years that I was with service on the service side inside, I was overseeing the implementation team. And a few years ago, we're seeing kind of mixed results with implementation. I think a lot of people would resonate with this. It's hard. Implementation is challenging, especially when it's a business management tool like Service Titan or Aspire that's so core to your function and to your operations. And so, we had toyed around with some different formats that implementation could kind of exist within around, group implementation or trying to overly specialize the people on our end on the Service Titan side who were implementing. So you had to go to this person for information on this topic and that person for information on that topic, et cetera. And what we found ultimately was simplicity was our best friend. Like, that is really the key to scaling. The more we could simplify the way that we operated within implementation, the more success we would find, even to the degree where we ended up proving out that by us as the software company taking on as much of the legwork of the implementation as we possibly could, that actually ended up being a better result for both us and the customer we were working with. Right. So you think about implementations, like for the listeners who have gone through it, I'm sure you're thinking about your own implementation experience of how much stuff you had to get done to implement, right? All the homework between calls and all of the things. And what we really were able to prove out on the Service Titan side was, even though it cost us more as a business upfront to own a lot of that work, right? I can't give as many projects to my implementation person if they're owning all of the legwork, right? That's way more hours they have to spend per implementation. So I have to give them less projects, which means I need more people, which costs more. Even though that was the case, we kind of initially saw, because it was so much more of a successful experience for the client when they were able to focus just on learning the software really well, right? That was their main focus as a client adopting. We saw so much more success with that approach that we actually ended up spending way less time on, failed implementations, issues that would come up, everything that extends the timeline significantly, right? That we ended up actually lowering the cost by focusing more on the client experience. It was a huge win-win. And not to say there haven't been challenges and issues with it that we've been solving and obstacles and all that, but like you zoom out and look at it overall, I think the lesson I really learned from it is by focusing in on the client experience and delivering that as the North Star, we actually were more successful as a business ourselves. And that is really the number one core value of Service Titan, is obsess over making customers successful. So applying that to implementation, it really came through for us. And I think now when I think about what we're doing with Aspire and kind of taking it to the next level, it's continuing that. I think Mark did an excellent job of, and you talked about it from a cultural standpoint, of having that mindset on the team, right? It's all about the client's success. And I think for us, when we think about what are we building over the next year into the product, how are we adapting our services teams to serve clients? It's all about where are we providing value and how can we really, enhance the value that we've been providing historically.
Any future rollouts you want to do a surprise announcement here that the industry hasn't heard of yet?
So it's not a surprise announcement. If you were at Ignite, you heard a little bit about this, but I would say the way I would put it is the thing I'm the most excited about over the next year is that we're going to be using kind of the latest technologies with AI and machine learning within the product to build out a churn prediction model that essentially looks at all of your properties and contracts as a landscape business and all the characteristics of them. How often are they engaging with you? How much are they, looking at from an upsell standpoint? How many issues are being reported that are taking place at that property? All the characteristics that are in the software to give you a proactive way to kind of reach out if the system sees that they are at higher risk of canceling their contract based on all those characteristics.
I like that.
So again, we did announce it at Ignite, but for those that weren't there, I think hopefully exciting to hear here, and certainly what I'm most excited about, I think, over the next year.
What else are you doing with AI? I just, as an aside, I like to race cars, and I was hanging out last night with one of the guys I race with, and he was test driving a McLaren, and the newest McLaren has all these different technology features, including AI. And it uses AI to help you have more fun driving the car on a track.
Wow.
And if you're trying to break the rear end free, it'll help you do it safely. It can see what you're doing. It knows the track and what you should be doing on that track. And it can kind of, not mind meld, but it can help you accentuate what you're trying to do. And, cars have nannies, right? That where it uses brakes and there's one other part of the nannies that I don't understand it all, but to help you take corners faster. And so now they've got that plus AI, and it's got motors on all four wheels, and so it can do some pretty amazing things if you want to go fast. I mean, you can't really predict all the ways AI is going to come into a product and help it in the future. Where else do you see AI being integrated into Aspire?
Yeah. So we're really thinking about it in a couple of different ways. Certainly when we talk about features we can build for landscape businesses like churn prediction, that wouldn't be possible in the same way without AI. is really, in a lot of ways, I think the most exciting. We're also releasing like OCR scanning. It's the ability to scan a receipt and have it like pick up what the text is and what's on the receipt and automatically put it into the right places within Aspire for you, and just really help with automation. And I think that word automation really is super relevant when we think about AI. Like, I think that there's been a lot of conversation around, hey, we have this new technology. How can we actually apply it to where landscapers need it most? And a lot of those conversations, if you talk to landscape businesses and kind of listen and kind of hear what ultimately they say, it often comes down to automation. Like what they're really looking for is ways to automate the most repetitive tasks that they do consistently. And so, things like OCR scanning the receipts, et cetera, is like one of those opportunities. One of the other things we're looking at right now is how to utilize the data that we have in Aspire to make the customers more successful in more of a proactive way. Right? Today's experience is you have all this data, but you have to go into the system, seek it out, and then get insights from what you see. And we have the capability now technologically to really show you those insights without having to seek them out, right? And so it's kind of sort of automating this process of seeking and getting insights. And I think what's really exciting for us is to be able to do that in the moment you need it. So think about an experience where you're building an estimate, right? You did a bid, did a proposal, you're building out your estimate for a particular contract. And you might say, okay, I think it's going to be, or your estimator is going to say, I think it's going to be this much labor. Well, Aspire has the data to understand in similar cases historically, how much labor did you estimate? And were you right looking at the actuals from that contract? And so if you think about an experience where when you're in that estimating kind of flow, it can proactively show you, hey, when you did this last time, you overestimated the amount of labor that you were going to need. Maybe you want to think about it differently and consider this amount instead, right? Just as like an insight that you could get today from reporting, but that it would automatically show you in the right moment. So that's not something that we're currently like, I couldn't say like, hey, this is going to be released on January 1st or anything like that. But it's those sorts of things that we are now hard at work on in terms of what we're building over the next year plus to really utilize all of the valuable data about your landscape business that we have in Aspire and show it to you in the right ways and the right moments to make it the most effective to deliver outcomes and value for your business.
God, I could foresee so many things going down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
You could have an agent telling the production managers, your guys are spending a lot of time in the yard. If you went about your planning differently, I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole. You could get your guys out sooner, and really you could have an agent for every position giving them advice.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities there. And think about the guys in the field, you think about the account managers and sort of their ability to walk a site and, be more effective and more efficient in identifying upsell opportunities. Another thing we're looking at for the coming year is a refreshed site audits functionality within Aspire as well. There's sort of, creates these endless opportunities. And, Jeffrey, one of the things you mentioned is just how fast the pace of like this technology is accelerating, right? The AI is basically like learning from itself on how to move faster and developing better and better models and better tools that we're seeing in a lot of these AI, the LLMs, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, et cetera. It's particularly exciting when you think about not only what's possible today, but where is this technology going to go 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and what that's going to then enable within Aspire as well. So we are fully focused on utilizing what's there today and being ready to utilize what's there tomorrow as well.
God, it's got to be a huge issue with priorities, because the more we talk about it, the more opportunities there are. How do you decide which priority you're going to go for?
Yeah, it's hard. That is, I think, the biggest challenge for us from a leadership standpoint within Aspire is what do we prioritize? And, not only utilizing these new technologies, but we have an existing customer base who has incredible ideas of things we could do, even small things at times, to provide a ton of value in terms of how quickly they can move through something. And so there's all these ideas. And so ultimately what we do is we look back at where is the value going to be the biggest for the largest number of customers. Like it is a calculation of that value.
Could we use AI to just track all of our maintenance properties and tell us, hey, you better get over to, property A, B, or C, because it looks like it's getting out of control? I mean, is that possible?
Theoretically, but you would have to have, it depends on what the inputs are, right? Like the AI would need to be trained on the current state of each property and some sort of characteristics of what's going on. So if you have
It would
that
have to
data,
watch
then
them.
yes.
I mean, it
Yeah.
would
And
have to
that's
watch
part
the
of
properties.
honestly what the churn predictor is going to do, right? It's going to
Yeah.
look at a lot of, hey, we're getting a lot of customer complaints, service hours are off, either too high or too low. It's going to look at all these factors that said you set up the plan for the property one way and it's happening different. And that's probably a lot of red flags. So you're going to see some things there outside of, the visuals, which will likely be incorporated through these enhancements to site audits where people go out to the property, review it and say, the key to all of this is having the data. Like if you're going to maximize the value of AI, you've got to have the data, and nobody has a broad set of data like Aspire does.
I just wonder though, could you use a satellite or could you put a drone on each big property and just have it do a walkthrough for you and tell you it's looking good or no, you better get out to this property?
Theoretically, yes. And I would start to ask questions like even from like a legal standpoint on, on all of that kind of stuff. But, I think that's the exciting part is like sitting and thinking of ideas after like, man, yeah, all of that is technically possible.
If
right?
driverless cars can run over
understand.
people and not go bankrupt doing it. Sorry, was that rude? I don't know. But I'm sure
there are challenges. Like for example, Jeffrey, we use facial recognition for people to clock in and clock out. Within the facial recognition technology, you can do a lot more than clock in, clock out.
Yeah.
You can derive aspects of a person.
Oh.
Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they sleepy? Are they things? But those get into some very, very dangerous waters.
Yeah.
And so, you've just got to be careful. And, ServiceTitan and Aspire have done a great job of saying, we're going to take it down the road that's safe, and both safe for the employees, safe for the customers, and do that. It is, with all of this technology comes some challenging areas where you could get in trouble.
Do you guys tap into weather forecasts to use AI to help companies get better prepared for, I don't know, like regarding churn or just getting prepared for events? Is that anything you're looking into?
So weather could be one of the data points that we build in when we look at some of those AI-based features. It's certainly a publicly accessible data point that's easy to pull. Current state, and Mark, you can maybe even speak this better than me, but current state, my understanding is we do surface that in certain moments, but it's not built into models, right? It's not proactively showing you, hey, watch out, the weather is bad in this way, but there are places of the software where it will show it to you.
Yeah, we tap into active weather that's going on. I think the opportunities you're looking at, and I think those are going to evolve over the coming years, probably as significantly as anything else will, is the forecasting piece. Like, it may be 50 degrees now, but it's going to be 20 degrees and snowing and sleeting in 4 hours if you're in St. Louis. So, here's some things that we think you need to do to get ready.
But also predicting,
it's probably not far in the future.
But also predicting lawn disease. Hey, based on the weather this year, account managers, you should be looking at these issues and keeping your eyes open. Any other surprises, Eli? Okay, we're going to get away from what could be to what is. Any other things coming in the pipeline you want to share with us?
Yeah, so we recently have been working on, so not only like front end features that help a landscape business, but also using AI to make your experience with Aspire better, right? Like how are we using it to make that experience better? So both in terms of our own teams using it, but I think actually more importantly, we recently have put out our new knowledge base, right? Which is basically, all of our documents and training materials and all that, and using AI surface the sort of better information when you need it, both by summarizing it. The tool can look at multiple sources of documents versus you having to seek out and find the one that you need and then answer questions about that for you. So it's a pretty exciting, I think, not front end feature about a landscape business, but in terms of making it easier to work with Aspire and learn it. We're also looking at AI there. And then, as I mentioned, internally with our own processes around how we can make our teams more efficient so that they're spending more time on the phone with landscape businesses, helping them improve their use of Aspire, and less time on the administrative side of, all the tracking and documentation that we do.
Can I bring two common issues I see, and you can tell me how you guys are handling them or might handle them? One common issue I see is over the years is that companies will change software, whatever they're using, to whatever the new thing is, before they've actually made really good use of their existing software. Either they didn't dive deep enough or that software continued to improve over the years. And they're like, we're so frustrated. But if you look, they weren't really using all the software. And related to that is when we have companies taking on a new software, a common best practice is to make sure you've got a super user or two or three. And don't, you have to embed that knowledge within the company. And so how are you guys helping companies? Like, are you going to give a company a super user through AI so they can do that, or tell the company, hey, you're only using 20% of what we got going on here, and big opportunities in these couple areas?
Yeah, so I love the idea of sort of like an AI-based super user that's like, working with you regularly. I think that's a very good idea. So I think the first thing for us, it's not AI-based, but it is, kind of human capital-based. We recently made the move so that every single Aspire customer has an assigned customer success manager that works with them directly. And, because when I think about this problem, I think the first thing is like, is someone who has knowledge and experience of the software there to help you when you need it, and looking at your account to understand your usage and make recommendations. And that is what our customer success team is all about. So I think that's like move one that's already been executed and now is in place. From there, what we're doing is working on improving the operation of our success team, really centered around this idea of providing value. So what that looks like is we've identified the kind of 4 to 6 biggest value drivers of Aspire. Like, what are the things within the software that provide the most value to the landscape businesses that are operating Aspire? And then tying those to the general business goals that we see landscape businesses often having for a year or a 2-year period. So if you come and you're on with your CSM and they're going to ask you, hey, what are your goals for this year or the next 2 years, whatever time frame you want? You might say it's to grow my revenue by X, or to improve my margin by Y, or whatever that may be. And then we've tied those goals to the value drivers of the system. Okay, if you want to grow your revenue, let's talk about the 3, 5, 7 things within Aspire that help you do that. Let's look at the ones you're already utilizing to see if we can bolster that. And then let's work together to adopt some of the ones you haven't adopted yet. And so again, not really AI-based. This is a little bit more manual, but in an operationalized way to ensure that what you spend your time and prioritize in terms of what you're doing within Aspire and what you're going to adopt, new, aligns with what you're trying to accomplish as a business, and that you have a guide there in your CSM to help you do that effectively.
How many accounts does a CSM have?
Depends. So we have specialized our team as well. So we have a team of CSMs who focus on sort of our what we call growth and corporate clients, so sort of on the smaller end, right? Smaller businesses to kind of medium-sized businesses. And then we have a team of CSMs that focus on our enterprise and strategic businesses, which is sort of our larger half of the market, if you will. And so the ratios are different between the two. And fluctuate over time, right? Obviously, like we get new accounts that finish implementation and come into success over time. And then we also hire regularly into the role as well.
Good. One thing I've seen, which is really good for you guys, is people that are thinking they want to be acquired are thinking, maybe I should get on Aspire because the acquiring companies might be on Aspire. And so I don't know how you guys got there, but you're there. And that's really a big plus for you. Yeah. I just wanted to say that. I can
say a couple of things about that. So yeah, a lot of the conversations I have, it's really interesting. And when I was on the Service Titan side overseeing the implementation team, we had a specialized mergers and acquisitions implementation team that focused only on the implementations you would do when an acquisition took place. And those implementations are different. Like your priorities in that moment are often much more towards speed, because you acquired this business, you want to get them in your roll-up reporting quickly. And so you need to get them on Service Titan or take their existing Service Titan account and kind of change it so that it aligns with how you operate. There's all sorts of implications there. But as part of overseeing that, one of the most common conversations I would have was with acquiring businesses around whether acquiring a business on Service Titan, or in this case on Aspire, is better because you know how they're going to operate. And there's a certain, I think, trust in the numbers to a degree, because you know the guardrails in the system are there that kind of force you to do things a certain way. versus acquiring a business not on the system, because you know that if you implement it or when you implement it, you're going to immediately see a boost just from that alone,
Okay.
right?
There you
And so it's like,
go.
okay, which one's better, And so that was always a debate we had. But to that end, we're actually taking a look at similarly establishing a specialized M&A implementation team with Aspire,
Gotcha.
because
See?
that trend is accelerating.
Yeah. We're going to run out of time here. I'm sure we've gone over the time I've asked you guys for. Anything you wanted to throw out in the conversation?
I just want to thank Mark. I mean, I think, we heard from him at the beginning of the conversation on just the entire journey and getting Aspire to this incredible place it is. And it's been an absolute honor for me, both getting to work with Mark over the last couple of months and learn from him significantly, but also just see the results of what he's done, right? Every day that I work with the Aspire team and interact with the client base. And I mean, it's an incredible community. The values are incredibly strong. The mission is ingrained in every single person on the team. And that does not just happen. So I just want to thank Mark, as well as, obviously Kevin and his role in it that you discussed, and, Janet and Dan Blake and Chase Cutler. I mean, so many people who contributed to that, but all under Mark's leadership. It's really an honor to be the steward now going forward. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Eli. I greatly appreciate that. It's been a journey of a lifetime for me to be on this Aspire ride. One of the important things for me, as I was looking at my time ending there, was making sure that it was in good hands going forward. And that started with a decision to join the ServiceTitan team, which we did several years ago. And then as we got to the point to say, okay, now we need to integrate the rest of the organization into ServiceTitan. We need the right leader to step in to really take this forward. And so I'm grateful we were able to find Eli, that he was willing to leave his responsibilities to take this on, and excited about where this is going to go. I am the biggest fan of Aspire, as you would imagine. So I'm going to be cheering on the sidelines, and Eli and I still catch up. He still gets to have the privilege or the disadvantage of hearing my thoughts on things from time to time. But I'm excited for the future. There is no question in my mind that Aspire's in the right hands going forward. Especially, you just touched on AI, Jeffrey. I mean, it's going to be revolutionary in the coming years. And I don't believe there is a company on planet Earth in a better position to serve contractors with all these changes in technology than ServiceTitan. Not just with Eli's leadership, but the leadership across the whole of ServiceTitan, the investments that are being made on those fronts that Aspire customers are going to be able to take advantage of. That's exciting. There's a lot of companies that are afraid of that and all of these changes. ServiceTitan's excited. ServiceTitan sees it as opportunity, as do I, as does Eli. And so that's an exciting future ahead for not just the team, but also our clients.
Yeah. You guys have to embrace this. I mean,
oh yeah,
there's so many companies that are going to pop up, not doing what you do, but that are going to offer some kind of enhanced specific service that will be hugely valuable. And that'll either be a company you'll partner with, or you'll have to copy what they're doing, or it becomes a competitor of some kind. And then I imagine someone's going to try to reinvent the whole software platform using a whole different approach. I don't know what that'll be, but right, you just see that every 10, 20 years where new technology comes in and it just approaches it totally different. So I'm sure your tech people are.
Yeah, where do you see companies get in trouble and get caught by competitors that come in, or companies that are under investing?
Yeah.
ServiceTitan's financials are public. You can go see. ServiceTitan is clearly not under investing. It is a key tenet of how ServiceTitan operates, has been since day one, and will be going forward. So they have strong leaders in place, and they have the money to go do it. And so that's what gives me confidence.
It's interesting you say that, because people ask me all the time, what software should I use? Like all the time. And I try to be a little bit agnostic, right? Not one software is going to be great for everybody. But I do say, they say, what should I look out for? And I say, if the software is too cheap, it means they're probably not reinvesting in the software. And no matter how good it is today, you're going to be unhappy in 3 years.
Absolutely.
And so ironically, that's the software has to be expensive. They have to be making enough money or have enough funding to keep up. And this is even more true today than it was, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of people you hear talk about the AI thing as some threat to the companies that are out there. And I'd say it is a threat, but it's also an opportunity. I mean, the threat is if you're not paying attention, if you're not incorporating it, then yeah, somebody else is going to, and they're going to pass you. But if you're looking at it the way Service Titan does, it is an absolute opportunity. And even new products that are being built. I mean, you look at Aspire, you look at Service Titan, the number of partnerships that we have. Like if you come to Ignite, and we have a whole vendor section that rivals most of the trade shows that are out there of partners of Aspire who are integrating unique technologies, unique products into Aspire. We have a robust API that's part of Aspire that's ever expanding. There's so many pieces there that if you have the right perspective, if you see the opportunity that's there, and obviously have the ability, the money to spend the time and invest in it, then you're going to drive incredible value going forward. I think the value that people are getting out of Aspire today is a fraction of what they're going to get 2 years, 3 years from now. As these technologies continue to evolve, you're going to see them incorporated either natively in Aspire, which is happening a lot, or through partnerships that we have.
Yeah. I think that's a plus because, like we talked a half hour ago, that how do you choose your priorities? I'd hate to be in those meetings, or I mean, it'd be fun, but I'd still hate that. Meaning, it's a tough decision you have to make. But if you do it right, and your clients are happy with your decisions, then it makes it so much easier on them.
Yeah, it's definitely the hardest part for sure. But also, as Mark just talked about, like also the biggest opportunity. Like, and it can be fun if you look at it. If you look at it that way, it's like, hey, what can we deliver that's going to be the most impactful, and we get to be part of building that. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Mark, Eli, really appreciate both of you. It was great getting to know you, Eli, and Mark, just getting to know you a little better.
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey.
We'll have you back in a couple of years when you've totally, when 3.0 for Aspire comes out, and it's totally different.
And
like
Jeffrey,
like
please
300.0. So
Jeffrey, please keep brainstorming on the AI ideas, even with future guests you have. Like, I think this is, something that we love to get feedback on and hear from others on as well. So if you have anybody on who comes up with a good idea, please pass it along to us as well. And, we want to consider all those when we're sitting in that prioritization meeting. Got to have all the best ideas there in front of us to consider.
Listen, I'm happy to get on a phone call with you. This whole conversation has made me think about, if I were to put me into your AI, like if you had a consultant built in, what would they do and what would that look like? So happy to have that conversation.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to be publishing this soon, and I'll let you guys know when we do.
sounds great.
Sounds great.
Good to talk with you, Jeffrey.